Here we are in Davos 2023. It's a beautiful day. There's a lot of interesting conversation going on here about what's happening in the state of the world. And we are privileged to have Anthony Scaramucci and Sir Martin Sorrell, by popular demand, as they've been very kind to do this for us in previous World Economic Forum meetings in Davos, to give us an understanding of what's happening right now, what our members, not just within the Leadership Development Network, but entirety of our 33,000 members in 145 countries, who are wanting to know what are the things, the challenges and the opportunities for the year. Sir Martin, Anthony, please can I ask you to address our global audience and give us the benefit of your understanding of what's happening here during the World Economic Forum and generally around the world.
Okay, Anthony, good to see you again.
See you, Sir Martin Sorrell.
So how was your last year?
I got destroyed last year. I mean, let's just be...
Well, are we talking about Jordan, or are we talking
about... Well, yeah, so I left you last May,
yes.
And then I went to the Jordanian desert for 14 days, which was a good metaphor for the year.
So what do you think about world economy? The general feeling here, I think publicly, is people are pretty depressed.
Yes.
In private meetings on one-on-ones are probably a little bit more optimistic. Where's your head
so
on
I always take the public sentiment here at Davos as a very good guide.
Yeah.
And let me just provide context. I was here in 2007, and people were saying that the trees were going to grow to the sky, and that we had reached this natural state of great economic expansion. Of course, we went into the global financial crisis shortly thereafter. When I got here in 2009, in January, people were saying that the earth was opening and all of us were going to fall into the earth. And of course, that was the start of the greatest bull market in my investment career, perhaps, of all time. And so, 2016, people said that Hillary Clinton would be the U.S. president. No question. 2020, they said, well, of course, Donald Trump will be reelected. Look at the robust economy. Missizing the pandemic. Okay, so that was the general sentiment. So I'm taking the pessimism here as a good sign.
Okay.
And particularly in the cryptocurrency markets, which I have a third of my
We'll come on
investment
to that in a minute.
Yeah, but I would say that people here, the establishment believes that cryptocurrency is dead, finito.
Yeah.
It's going to go into the Museum of Natural History alongside of the T-Rex.
So time to buy is what you're saying.
I think so.
Okay, but just in terms of the economy for a minute, are you expecting the Fed to pivot early, late, or the central banks to pivot? And I mean, that seems to be driving some of the market optimism at the minute because inflation is coming down, we think. What do you feel? And there's another school of thought that the banks will pivot too quickly and then we'll have inflation again as we go through the second half of this year. What's your view on that?
So my view, I think I have to provide context first so that I can give you my view. But like everything in life, there's a little bit of a butterfly effect. And so ultimately, when an economic historian writes about the COVID-19 situation and the monetary policy, they're going to say that the Fed missized the number of hospital beds in China. Now, let me explain that. The Fed took a position that they would induct a lot of money into the marketplace and that the inflation would be transitory, and so they would rein it in. And that was a missizing of the disconnection of the supply chain. And what they got wrong was the healthcare system in China, because ultimately the Chinese public health officials could not reopen that market. They did not want to have 20, 30, 50, 60 million deaths, given the nature of the demography of China and the comorbidities. So they left China locked down longer than people anticipated, which led to way more inflation. So yes, you had too much money in the system, 40% increase in M2, which is unheralded, plus this disconnection of the supply chain. And so I actually think now, because the Fed embarrassed themselves by that analysis, they're going to be too aggressive on the way out of this, and they're likely going to raise rates up into that 5 zone.
5 plus.
Yeah, 5 plus before the end of the year in order to restore credibility.
And not cut this year?
Well, you have to tell me what the economy is going to do. My guess is we'll probably get a signal from them towards the end of the year that they're either cutting or they're pausing. They're definitely super worried because they don't want a deep recession globally, and they're right now running a very hot chance, 80+% chance that we're going to have a soft recession.
So you mentioned China. I mean, the big thing, one of the big things here, obviously, is that people have suddenly woken up with the fact that that China might grow. I mean, Goldman's forecast for China is 5% this year. They did 3% last year. Now, if we have a weak Q1 in China, which we will do because it's Chinese New Year and they're just changing the lockdown really, and it will take time to fire up. But Q2 is forecast, I think, 13% growth in GDP in China, and for the year 5%. Are you saying that you think that Chinese reflation or resurgence will cause inflation to again?
So I actually think no, because they are effectively the Saudi Arabia of manufacturing. And so what will end up happening is more goods and services will be put up on the supply chain, a result of which you'll see a reduction in prices.
Okay, so
you're already seeing that in the car markets, the used car markets,
chips, and
chips, etc. Real leaders can own their nonsense.
But let's more. So the net for the YPOs who are watching this, if there are any out there who are watching it, I think the lesson is you have to be much more selective geographically. All the things you said, I sort of fundamentally agree with, and I think basically you come to the conclusion, and let's move on to the election in 2024, North and South America become more important, the Middle East becomes more important, Europe a big question mark, Asia, I'm going to say ex-China, I don't mean ex-China, but when you have big positions in China, you question it. So India, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Southeast Asia will become more important.
I'm going to say something that hopefully will be provocative to YPO people. Whether we like it or not, you got to get more involved. Your political indifference, and I don't mean you, Sir Martin Sorrell, because you're politically active. Hello, Mr. Politician, I'm not giving you money if you keep up this heat and rhetoric and this nonsense related to China. So I can't do it because it's against, you're telling me you're supporting that bottom 25% and you want to gin up their anger so you can get reelected, but it's against our national interests and it's against our long-term strategic planning. And Mr. Politician, you talk about the short-termism of a publicly listed CEO. How about a Western Democratic leader and their short-termism? We have no 10-year plan, we have no 20-year plan, we have no 30-year plan.
Well, that's the same thing because you're subject to election every 4 or 5 years.
Okay, but come on, George Marshall had a plan.
Well,
George Kennan had a plan.
Well, we have that in the UK. We don't have a plan in the UK. It's
but we
very,
did
very, very
have
short
plans, Sir Martin. We did have plans. If you read Nigel Hamilton's 3 books on FDR, which are arguably the best books on FDR, in my opinion. Comrade Black wrote a good book on FDR. But Nigel's books, he took it from a perspective of Mr. Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, did not have the opportunity to write a personal memoir. So I'm going to take all of his documents, I'm going to sit here for 3 years, and I'm going to write it for him. And what did Roosevelt do? By 1943, he was thinking about the post-World War II architecture. And Roosevelt had a lot of self-confidence, maybe not the brightest guy, but he brought some of the smartest people in the world around him. And so he was the one that sanctioned Bretton Woods. He was the one that got the IMF going. He was the one that said, okay, the League of Nations failed, but we're going to get the UN going. Okay, and he's the one that directed it to San Francisco before it ended up in New York. And if you read Nigel Hamilton's 3 books on Roosevelt, we had good game. We had good game. These were democratically elected leaders that said, you know what, we're going to take a 25-year horizon. Oh, okay, we have a problem with the Iron Curtain. We're going to send $14.4 billion, $190 billion of today's dollars to Western Europe to rebuild Western Europe. Could you imagine a nationalistic American leader saying, oh, by the way, we're going to dump that kind of money?
So what about SBF? How did he manage to con you?
All right, so this is a very important distinction that Lloyd Blankfein, my old boss, has always told me to mention in every interview. He gave me the money. Okay, so let's just contrast that with the venture capitalists that gave him the money.
Right.
But he did con me. Okay, and I want to take you through that. And he was wearing the shorts and he was jumping his leg and so forth. I thought he was the Mark Zuckerberg of crypto. Let me frame that for you, though, because we both have been here for a long period of time, where Mark Zuckerberg showed up on this mountaintop in a sweatshirt and a T-shirt. Here I am, always classically dressed, and looking at him saying, what the hell is this guy doing? In the meantime, he created $1 trillion company. Now, it's backed off from $1 trillion. But Mark Zuckerberg, and whatever issues he had in his personality and whatever youngness he had, he was developing something that was game-changing. if you listened to Sam and you sat with him, he was very deep on many different subjects, and he had a real vision for building a super financial services app in the United States that would go from crypto into stocks and bonds and tokenized assets, eventually tokenizing art and real estate. And so whether we could talk about his character and who he is, but he was a very cunning and very brilliant person from that perspective. And so I'm going to say something that doesn't reflect well on me. I liked him, and I considered him a friend. Mm-hmm. And I also felt that there was a generational gap between him and I. My oldest son is 6 months younger than Sam, and so I'm closing in on 60, Sam is 30. I said, okay, here's this wonderful opportunity where I could take my 3 decades plus of relationships in the commercial businesses, Wall Street, investment banking, but also my corporate relationships, and I can avail them to this new generation of people, and I can help them grow that business. Okay, again, bad comparison today, but Eric Schmidt, who's a personal friend of mine, was very helpful to Sergey and Larry in the development of Google. And so I said, okay, this could be an interesting part of my career.
So the father in the room.
Yeah, we're let's say the more mature adolescent. Let's just put it that way. But the point I was making is I got it wrong. Yeah. I did not think, after meeting his parents, the Mishpoka, and seeing how he grew up, and talking to his friends, I did not
about a year and a half before all this blew up. I won't say who it was, but somebody said to me they had a friend who sold their company to SBF, and within a month he departed because he said it was a complete shit show.
I wish I had that conversation with you
what I don't understand, and maybe it's FOMO, that drove it. I don't understand why. Maybe there was that wave. Do you think he was just brilliant? But no, I mean, we see this in our industry. Very brilliant, very creative people, very thoughtful people who dislike bureaucracy and process, and that's the problem.
No, this is a guy that had a God complex. This guy, see, look, okay, you have to remember, you either get this or you don't get this. Okay, my dad was a laborer, Sir Martin. Okay, he was a construction worker. He paid his taxes. He paid his bills. He paid his parking tickets. He had an expression for us as kids: "Hey, if you can't afford the price of the ticket, don't go to the movies." Yeah. Remember that expression when we were all kids? Okay, and so I looked up to my father from that perspective. He didn't have an education, but he had a work ethic. I tell my children and I tell my staff, we're never doing anything to dishonor my dad, okay? Sure. He left me with a good name, and he may call me stupid for being in crypto or stupid for working for Donald Trump. I'll accept stupid, but I'm not going to accept unethical, okay? And so what really upsets me about this situation is the malevolence of Sam, okay? Ultimately, I believe he set up FTX to fund his personal account known as Alameda. He looked at it as free float for Alameda. But I'm so smart because I have this God complex. I'm going to make a ton of money for myself, and then I'm going to move the money back into these people's accounts, and everybody's going to be fine. And not only do I believe that, read his testimony that he was about to give to the Congress, read the interviews that he's got the ankle bracelet strapped on right now, and he's still allowing journalists, and his lawyers are still allowing journalists to interview him. He's acting with great denialism.
He was always, as you were talking, he was almost like a cult figure, wasn't he? I mean, if you think about in the Bahamas, and they're all sleeping on the.
Well, we had a big cryptocurrency conference with him. I brought Prime Minister Blair there.
Yeah, sure. There's a picture of the Blair and Clinton on the stage with him.
And they're mad at me for that, and I have apologized to them, but. We can revise history today. Here's what happens in a fraud.
We all make mistakes.
Here's what happens in a fraud. We blame the victims. We say, well, how did XYZ and ZYX get into Theranos? They're smart people. Sure. How did Goldman get into the $1 billion whale? Okay. How did Anothony end up with SBF? And so we're always going to blame the victim, and the media is going to come out and revise history. I had somebody say to me last week, I was at a crypto conference in San Moritz. Yes. He said to me, I knew Sam was a fraud. I said, oh, you did? Okay. How did you know? And they gave me all this revivalism. And then they said, I had an account at FTX. I said, okay, I just have to ask, if you knew Sam was a fraud, why did you have an account at FTX? See, I didn't have an account at FTX. Yeah. I didn't have an account at FTX because I run the business from a very tight compliance perspective. And if he was going to be my investor, I put the money the money that he gave me and the coins that I bought them at Coinbase.
Sure.
I did not want the conflict of interest. So that did save us. He also wanted to buy 100% of the business for stock. You've got people in the room that could bear witness to this. I had senior partners at the firm that wanted that. They thought he was the next Facebook. I said, hey, I'm 58 years old, I'm now 59. I said, I'm taking cash,
Sure.
okay, because this is my life's work,
Okay.
and I may take portion in stock later on, and I don't want to sell them the whole business right now. Let's take a baby step and sell them 30% of the business. So I got a lot wrong, but my gradualism and my caution also protected the firm.
Okay. So an eventful year. We should do this more
I mean,
regularly.
the eventful year. The year sucked. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I mean, the year completely sucked. But here's the great thing about life. I'm here right now. I'm sitting here with you. We've got an exciting year ahead.
Absolutely.
And I think the number one thing for everybody in the YPO world is resilience. Come on, man. I mean, you can't be a baby and can't play the victim.
It probably will
Get
be
up,
a,
dust
it
yourself
probably will
off.
be a better year this year.
Probably be a better
Thank
year.
you very much.
But if it's not a better year, you and I are going to be hopeful for 24. Okay? That's the bottom line, right?
Well, I think we have to wait until the results of the presidential election 24 for the real world to get better. But that'll be next year.
I'll just say this. I am a patriot first and a believer in the democracy before I'm a partisan. Okay, so if we get Trump back in there, I'll be out there fighting. I'll be fighting for the democracy.
Well, we'll see what happens. Okay, thank you very much.
Anthony, Sir Martin, that was a tour de force, a socio-political, historical, economic understanding. We have members in 145 countries, and for them to get the background to that has been fantastic.
Good.
And of course, we can look back to what you said beforehand, and hopefully next year we'll do the same. Thank you again for your real understanding and analysis. Very kind.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.